Abby Elphinstone is a successful author of children's books.
The first set of books I ever wrote was a trilogy. The Dream Snatcher came first, the sequel was The Shadow Keeper, and then the finale was The Night Spinner. After that, I wanted a change of format. I wanted to write a standalone book. So Sky Song exists as a story completely as a whole by itself. Now, though, I'm writing a brand new series called The Unmapped Chronicles, and that I think might be 5 books, which I think might be called a quintet, but I don't know. But we'll see. I've written 2, and I hope to write 3 more. I write adventure books with a little bit of magic. So I straddle 2 genres, adventure and fantasy. My books are quite scary in parts, so readers as young as 7 sometimes read the books but get a little bit scared. So I write a different story with every book, obviously. The plot is different, but the themes, the messages of every single book I write are the same. I believe that values of courage, kindness, hope, and friendship are the cornerstones of what it means to be human. And we live in a world that is often politically, socially, morally, very turbulent, very difficult to understand. And so I think now more than ever, it is important to return to this idea of being tolerant, being kind.
Abby hasn't always been an author, and her journey to getting her work published wasn't always easy.
I began working life as a teacher in a secondary school, and I taught for 5 years, English again, and I tried to write books at the same time as teaching. But if anyone has been a teacher, they'll know that there is a lot of marking. It's a very tiring job. So the time I gave myself to write was a tiny bit, 2 hours, 1 hour every night after I'd finished marking. So eventually, on my 4th book, my 97th try with a literary agent, I got an email saying, yes, we love this and we would like to represent you. So it took a long time, but I think inside every person, or maybe it's just some people who face ongoing rejection, there grows a quiet grit, a determination to succeed no matter what. So I just kept holding on to the positive comments and tried to rework them into a book that was going to be perhaps marketable, successful, enjoyable for readers.
Abby's books are full of adventurous characters living in wild places. So where does she get the inspiration for her stories?
I start every story I write by trying to come up with an idea that nobody else has stumbled across yet. And sometimes I find these ideas walking down the street or strolling in the park, never really at my desk, because that's too pressurized to think of an idea, but it happens more organically if I'm walking and daydreaming. Once I've come up with an idea that I believe in, that takes a long time, I then usually go on an adventure to a far-flung place, because I write about wild settings, to cement the setting, to really grow the fictional world I want to write about. So I've been out to the Arctic to research this book called Sky Song, which is set in a snowy kingdom called Erkenwald. And I went dog sledding, I watched the Northern Lights, the closest thing I've ever seen to watching magic unfurl in our world. And I saw hundreds of orcas, killer whales, feeding on tiny fish called herring under the sea. So those adventures formed the basis of this book. I also like writing about tribes, people who live in the furthest corners of our world that often maybe have a story to tell, but because of where they live, the story isn't told. So for the heroine of Sky Song, a girl called Eska, I went out to Mongolia to live with the Kazakh eagle hunters. I'd seen a photograph by an Israeli photographer, Asher Svidensky, of a girl called Aishulpan. And she was 12 years old when the photo was taken, and she is the only eagle huntress in a tribe full of men and boys. And I thought that was cool, the only girl. So I knew I wanted to meet her to write this book.
Abby wrote part of Sky Song while she was in hospital.
I spent 4 months in hospital, a third of a year. And during the course of that time, the midwives and the doctors and my friends who came to visit me were so unfailingly kind. And I wanted to write a book, Sky Song, that celebrated this theme of kindness.
Abby has an unusual way of planning her stories.
So I'm dyslexic, and when I started writing, I was very scared that that would be a problem and that I wouldn't be able to be a successful writer because my ideas often are a bit confused and tangled. But what I've realised is that dyslexic people think hugely creatively and they notice things other people miss. So I've learnt that if I doodle, if I draw the world I want to write about as a map, so maybe I put a forest here, a mountain here, a sea, a river, a lake, then I might have my characters travelling from place to place, and at every place they encounter an obstacle. Maybe they're betrayed in one place, they're robbed in another, they discover something they weren't meant to see at the river. And then slowly but surely, my plot starts to take shape. So I used to think doodling was wrong. My teachers used to say, stop doodling, start concentrating. But I think drawing your way into a story, especially if you're dyslexic, can be a very, very useful tool.
Today, Abby spends a lot of time visiting schools and talking to the thousands of children who love her books and are inspired by her stories.
I want to talk to young children about this idea of being creative. I'm not an obvious sort of person for being an author. I have dyslexia, and yet I'm an author. I had 96 rejections before I became an author. So I want to tell children that the creative people are often the people who are brave enough to fail.